I often think about our most distant ancestors. And by that I mean the earliest hominids that were beginning to feel and think the way that we do today. I often wonder what it was like to see something happen for the first time that you have no context for, no prior events that mirrored it or that resembled it. It was something new, something small that grew into a powerful idea. In, in a way, it's the story of someone doing something for the very first time and another person recognizing it within themselves, saying, wow, that was incredible. In every single person's life, when we're children, we experience things for the first time. Things that happen to us that change us forever. This can range from the first time we feel intense cold or hunger. It can be the first time that we're yelled at. It can be the first time that we see our parents cry. It changes us forever, those little moments. But at the same time, it's not as traumatic as, in my mind, I like to think the very first time those things happened. Because we have a wealth of experience surrounding us. Other people don't react to those things the way that we do as children, and we notice that. I've read that as children are developing, they look around them at other people to learn how to feel about things. They see something scary and other people seem afraid. That amplifies their own feelings. If they see something funny and other people are laughing, that too ingrains within them the humor and the lightheartedness of it, and that sticks with us. But when I think about our distant ancestors, I'm not really thinking of these childhood experiences of one person. I'm thinking about the childhood experience of our entire species when it was young. Before there were words to describe things, before other people knew how to act, before we had a wide breadth of experience and examples that we could point out to reference things by. There must have been a moment when the human mind witnessed and finally understood what it meant to be heroic. The first hero that we saw and recognized and remembered. I imagine there was a fire in the forest. And primitive humanoids run from it in fear. And one of them, perhaps a lone Homo erectus, looks around and doesn't see their child, their parent, or their sibling, or a friend, or maybe even their rival. And they look back and they go, I need to go help them. I need to save them. And they do something that seems insane to the rest of their tribe. They run towards the flames. They find a gap and they dance between it. And a few moments later, they emerge carrying their loved one to safety. And after they escape the forest fire and are sitting perhaps on the edge of the burnt trees, in between the savannah and the great forests, as they're catching their breath, others look to that person and say, why did they do that? And at the same time, they're overjoyed that another member of their tribe that they thought was lost was still with them. And they recognized that person, that insanity, was something more. And they didn't have a word for courage. Not yet. But they knew that person was courageous, brave, maybe a little crazy. But they were thankful that that person was there and stepped up when they did. Another example that I think about was the first time they fought back against a predator. Perhaps they were sitting in their cave, watching the entrance, afraid of the dark. Many of them were sleeping, but a few stayed awake at night. And they heard a growl or a crunch of leaves. And they knew what it meant. And they began to shout and wave their arms. Perhaps there was another way out of the cave, and they all began to move towards it. And a shadow emerged in the moonlight. And one of them had a long stick that they had chewed or shaped with a rock until it was sharp enough to dig in the earth. And as the beast entered the cave, they turned around and they faced it. And maybe they survived that encounter, maybe they didn't. But when the others returned, they saw blood, a trail that exited the cave, a wounded animal, perhaps a dead predator, and their friend lying there, maybe unharmed, maybe wounded, maybe also they were dead. But they stood around in awe because this fellow tribesman had done the unthinkable and faced death. In the past, many of them might have been taken down as they ran into the forest, and a few of them were hunted down. But this time, the hero had stood in the way of danger and somehow succeeded. This person might not have been the strongest person of the tribe. He might not have been the bravest, or he or she might not have been the smartest. They had something inside of them, a spark, that burst into a flame when the stakes got high. And they threw themselves at the problem instead of running from it. They went back into the fire. They dove into a raging river. They fought the predators. They moved towards the danger instead of away from it. I like to think that they told stories about that moment for years to come, generations even. Their grandchildren were talking about it. Our grandfather stood against the beast and saved our family. And perhaps the young people of the tribe heard that story and were inspired by it. And they sharpened their own sticks, gathered their own rocks and clubs. And some of them said, if that happens again, I'm going to emulate that person. I'm going to tap into that bravery that they displayed. I'm going to find it within myself. And they'll sing songs about me. They'll tell stories about me. But most importantly, I'll make a difference and I'll protect my tribe. That story might not have survived very long. It might have been lost. This event may have happened many times before it really got ingrained into us. A sickness passes through and only a few people survive, and only one of them remembers the story, and it's distorted and details are omitted. The essence of the story is there, but the names have been forgotten. But eventually that story became a myth. It became much larger than the actual event, because what it represented is much larger than one single event. It represents human courage in the face of adversity, which is something we still revere to this very day. And that myth would have been heard by very intelligent people, storytellers, shaman, wise women, and they would have made sure to transmit that story because they would see the value in it. They would know that it inspired their fellow man to strive towards something greater. It would illustrate to young, impressionable children what they were capable of. It went from a personal thing to something that is a teaching moment for the human spirit. They probably sat around campfires telling those stories for thousands of years, and the stories and the incidents changed, but they knew that they loved those stories and that the people would listen to them. They were exciting. They were their movies, their books. And those stories would be transmitted from place to place, from person to person. Stories would merge together. They would blend. They would be exaggerated. But the core, the seed of that story stayed the same. And that is that you can make a difference if you're brave and if you're prepared. And I don't mean preparing in advance, although that is important. I mean, you're prepared to face the danger. You're willing to risk your life for the greater good of others. The story of the first hero is just one of many that we tell each other to this very day. Probably half the movies we make are about heroes in some form. These may not be warriors or hunters. They may be people that face different types of adversity and keep going. They may be people that face failure and keep trying. I like to think that the first heroes didn't really know why they were doing it, except that they felt this wasn't the end of whatever they were risking their lives for. This didn't have to be the end of whatever danger they were moving towards. Whatever danger threatened to end right there, they said, no, this keeps going, and I can be a part of it continuing to go forward. Sometimes in our lives, we feel this force within us that tells us it's time to stop. And they probably heard that voice too. There's no way my friend is still alive in that fire. It's time to stop. It's time to give up. Turn around. There's a voice that says that, and then there's another voice that says, no, not yet. Go back. It's not too late. If you don't try, it is too late, but it's not too late yet. Go back. It goes without saying that because there were people that did that, the human race is still here. We're here because of countless people that defied logic and reason and did something crazy to ensure that our story didn't end. Every single act of kindness, every invention that we've made, every time someone stays awake all night to guard the walls or to make sure that the fire didn't die, every single time people did something small to keep everyone else going, That's a moment of heroism. I like to think that the first hero wasn't a demigod with supernatural strength and cunning and will. He was just an ordinary person who, in their time, was under no expectation to do the impossible, to stand up to danger, to stand up to adversity. And yet they did. They went for it. They were unwilling to give in to fear, and they wanted to keep the story alive. The first hero never left us. We carry that spark inside of us, and the human race will carry it forever as long as it exists. Every time we choose to keep going, that spark lights into a roaring fire within us, and that spark never dies as long as we just keep going.